I stood in the empty auditorium, clutching my national championship trophy, watching my phone buzz with a text from mom. Sarah scored 2 goals today, so proud. My hands trembled as I read it. Not a single word about me. Not a question about where I was or how my competition went. Just Sarah. Always Sarah. The janitor was sweeping up confetti around me. Gold and silver streamers that had fallen during the standing ovation I'd received just 20 minutes ago. The biggest moment of my life, and I'd spent it scanning the crowd for faces that never came. I was 17 years old and I'd just won the National Youth Piano Competition. The prize was a full scholarship to Juilliard, a cash award of $50,000, and a debut performance at Carnegie Hall. 3,000 competitors had started this journey. Only one could win. And my family had chosen to watch my sister kick a ball around a field in a regional qualifier match instead. The worst part? They didn't even know what they'd missed. I hadn't told them I'd advanced past regionals, hadn't mentioned making it to state finals, certainly never said I was competing at nationals today. Because I already knew. I knew they wouldn't come. This wasn't the first time, you see. This was my second life. In my first life, I'd died at 32 in a car accident, bitter and alone. I'd spent that entire lifetime trying to win my family's love, always coming in second to Sarah's mediocrity. In that life, I'd told them about nationals. They'd promised to come. And then the morning of the competition, Dad had called to say Sarah had a really important game, and they couldn't miss it. Could I reschedule my nationals? As if you could reschedule the culmination of a year-long national competition. I'd competed anyway, devastated and distracted. I came in fourth place. Close enough to taste victory, far enough to feel like a failure. I never recovered from that disappointment. I'd given up piano, given up on myself. Spent the rest of that life in a gray corporate job, watching Sarah's mediocre soccer career fizzle out by age 22 while she remained the family's golden child. Mom and Dad had paid for her failed attempts at college, her bad investments, her terrible boyfriends. I'd gotten nothing but criticism and demands to help your sister out. Then I died, and somehow, impossibly, I'd woken up on my 13th birthday. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the memories were too vivid, too complete. I knew everything that was going to happen. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every time I'd been overlooked, and this time I was going to be smart about it. The first thing I did was hide my piano playing from my family. In my first life, I'd been desperate for their approval, constantly performing for them, begging them to attend my recitals. Mom would say she was too tired. Dad would say he had work. Sarah would throw a tantrum if the attention wasn't on her. This time, I told them I'd quit piano, said I wasn't interested anymore. Mom had actually looked relieved. That's probably for the best, sweetie. Those lessons were getting expensive and Sarah's soccer club fees are going up. I'd smiled and nodded. Then I'd taken the money I'd secretly saved from birthday gifts and summer jobs and found a piano teacher 3 towns over. Mrs. Chen was elderly, brilliant, and asked no questions when I paid her in cash and requested that she never contact my family. "You have a gift," she'd told me after my first lesson, tears in her eyes. "Whoever made you hide this should be ashamed." I practiced at the school music room during lunch after class on weekends when my family thought I was at the library. I entered small competitions under Mrs. Chen's address, not my home. I won. Again and again and again. Because here's what my family never understood. I wasn't just good at piano, I was extraordinary. In my first life, even with all their neglect, even with all the sabotage, I'd nearly won nationals. This time, with 4 extra years of practice and the wisdom of a 32-year-old mind in a teenage body, I was unstoppable. By the time I was 16, I'd won every regional competition I'd entered. My name was becoming known in classical music circles. Mrs. Chen had connections to Juilliard, and she'd quietly submitted my applications and recordings. My family never noticed. They were too busy with Sarah. Sarah, who was aggressively average at soccer. Who made the school team but warmed the bench? Who got participation trophies that Mom and Dad treated like Olympic medals? In my first life, I'd been consumed with jealousy. This time, I mostly felt pity. Sarah was being set up for failure. They were teaching her that she was exceptional when she was ordinary, that the world owed her success when she hadn't earned it. But my pity had limits. Like today, Sarah's game wasn't even important. It was an early round regional qualifier. Her team would win or lose, and it wouldn't matter. She'd sit on the bench most of the game anyway. But my nationals? This was everything. I looked down at the trophy again. It was heavy, made of crystal and gold with my name engraved on it. Elena Martinez, first place National Youth Piano Competition. My phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah this time. "Where are you? Mom's taking us for ice cream to celebrate." Not an invitation, just a statement. They hadn't even noticed I wasn't there. I texted back, "Can't make it, busy." She responded immediately. "Ugh, you're so boring, always at the library." I pocketed my phone and looked around the auditorium one more time. The judges had wanted to take photos with me. The other competitors' families had congratulated me warmly, some with tears in their eyes at the beauty of my performance. I'd played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, one of the most technically difficult pieces in the classical repertoire. I'd played it flawlessly. The head judge, a renowned pianist who'd performed at venues around the world, had gripped my hands afterward. In 30 years of judging this competition, I've never seen anyone play like that. You have something special, Elena. Don't let anyone take it from you. If only he knew. Mrs. Chen approached me now, her small frame somehow commanding in the empty space. "Your family?" she asked gently. "Exactly where I expected them to be," I said. "Not here." She pressed her lips together, angry on my behalf. "What will you tell them?" "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." Because here's what I knew from my first life. My family didn't value things unless they came with public recognition and social currency. They didn't care about Sarah's soccer because she was good. She wasn't. They cared because it was visible. Games had audiences. Trophies went on the mantle where neighbors could see them. If I told them now that I'd won nationals, they'd make excuses. They'd say I should have reminded them that they would have come if they'd known it was that important. They'd minimize it somehow, find a way to make it my fault. No, I was going to wait. I was going to let the consequences of their choices catch up with them in the most public, humiliating way possible. Because in 3 months, I'd be performing at Carnegie Hall, and that was something they couldn't ignore. The next few weeks passed in a strange duality. At home, I was quiet, unremarkable Elena, the daughter who did her homework and stayed out of the way, the sister who dutifully attended Sarah's games and clapped at appropriate moments. At school and in the wider world, I was becoming famous. The video of my nationals performance had been posted online by the competition organizers. It went viral, not just in classical music circles, but broadly. There was something about a teenage girl playing one of the world's most difficult piano pieces with such passion and technical perfection that captured people's imagination. Within a week, I had 2 million views. Within 2 weeks, I was being featured in arts magazines and local news segments. My school knew, of course. The principal called me into her office, beaming with pride. "Elena, this is extraordinary. We had no idea you were competing at this level. We'd love to feature you in our newsletter. Maybe have you perform at the Winter Assembly?" "I'd prefer to keep it low-key," I told her. This was a small lie. I didn't mind the attention. But I knew my family didn't read the school newsletter. They barely came to school events unless Sarah was participating. The principal looked confused but agreed. "Well, if you change your mind." "Elena, do your parents know about this?" "They know I play piano," I said, which was technically true. They knew I'd played piano years ago. They just thought I'd quit. At home, nothing changed. Mom and Dad talked about Sarah's soccer constantly. Her team had made it to the next round of regionals, and to hear them tell it, Sarah was single-handedly responsible. Never mind that she'd played a total of 15 minutes across 2 games. Dinner conversations were a special kind of torture. "Sarah's coach says she has real potential," Dad announced one night, serving himself a second helping of potatoes. "Think she could get a college scholarship." I nearly choked on my water. Sarah's coach said that to every parent. It was sports politics, and Sarah's skills were nowhere near scholarship level. "That's great," I said mildly. "What about you, Elena?" Mom asked, as if suddenly remembering I existed. "How's school?" "Fine, got an A on my calculus exam." "That's nice, sweetie." Mom turned immediately back to Sarah. Now, about your tournament next month. We need to book the hotel early. I tuned out. I'd heard this conversation or versions of it hundreds of times across 2 lifetimes. Sarah, at least, wasn't malicious. She was just spoiled and oblivious. She genuinely thought she was exceptional because no one had ever told her otherwise. In my first life, I'd resented her bitterly. This time, I could see her more clearly, a mediocre girl being set up for a hard fall when she entered the real world. But that didn't mean I was going to protect her from that fall. After dinner, I went to my room and checked my email. There was a message from the Carnegie Hall events coordinator confirming details for my debut performance. The date was set, December 15th. Prime season, a prestigious Sunday evening slot usually reserved for established performers. The prize package from Nationals had included not just the performance opportunity, but full marketing support. Carnegie Hall was treating this seriously. There would be press coverage, professional photography, a reception afterward. Tickets were already on sale. The venue held 2,804 people. It was going to sell out. I drafted an email to the coordinator, professional and calm despite my racing heart. I confirmed all the details, then added, "Please send physical invitations to my home address for my family. They'll want to have something formal." It was a test. Would they notice when the invitations arrived? Would they even open mail addressed to me? The invitations arrived on a Tuesday, in elegant cream envelopes with the Carnegie Hall logo embossed in gold, the kind of invitations you couldn't miss. I got home from school to find them on the kitchen counter, still sealed. Mom was making dinner, distracted. "Some mail came for you, sweetie." I put it on the counter. "Thanks," I said, picking up the envelopes. There were 4, one for each family member. "What is it?" Mom asked absently, not really interested. "Just some school thing," I lied smoothly. She nodded and went back to chopping vegetables. I took the invitations to my room and put them in my desk drawer. They hadn't even asked to see them. Hadn't asked what school thing would send formal. Invitations in Carnegie Hall envelopes. The test was complete. They weren't paying attention. 2 weeks before Carnegie Hall, the local paper ran a feature story, not the school newsletter, the actual city paper. Front page of the arts section. Local teen to debut at Carnegie Hall after Nationals win. The article included the viral video of my performance, details about the competition, and quotes from the judges about my once-in-a-generation talent. My phone exploded with texts from classmates and teachers. The school principal called my house personally. Mom answered. I listened from the top of the stairs. "Yes, this is Elena's mother." "I'm sorry, what? Carnegie Hall?" "I think there must be some mistake." "No, Elena plays piano, but she's not." "Are you sure?" "Yes, Thank you." She hung up and immediately called Dad at work. I could hear the panic in her voice. "Tom, the school just called. They're saying Elena is performing at Carnegie Hall in 2 weeks." "Did you know about this?" A pause while Dad responded. "No, I didn't know either. How could we not know? Did she say anything to you?" "Well, we need to talk to her when she gets home from school." I was home. I'd been home for an hour. They just hadn't noticed. I went back to my room and waited. 15 minutes later, Mom knocked on my door. "Elena, can you come downstairs, please? Family meeting." I found all 3 of them in the living room. Mom and Dad on the couch, Sarah in the armchair. They looked confused and slightly accusatory. "Elena," Dad started, his voice careful. "Your school principal called. She congratulated us on your Carnegie Hall performance." I sat down calmly. "Yes, December 15th. "December 15th? Mom's voice pitched higher. "That's 2 weeks away. Elena, why didn't you tell us?" "I did tell you," I said. This was a lie, but I wanted to see how they'd react. "No, you didn't," Sarah said. "I would have remembered something like that." "I sent you all invitations. They came in the mail 2 weeks ago." Mom's face went pale. "The envelopes on the counter? You said those were for a school thing." "You asked what they were. I assumed you'd open an invitation addressed to you." I kept my voice neutral, factual. Dad frowned. Elena, this is a big deal. You should have made sure we knew. And there it was. Already, somehow, this was my fault. You're right, I said, not meaning it. I should have been more clear. Well, now you know. It's December 15th at 7 p.m. I have 4 tickets for you if you'd like to come. If we'd like to come? Mom looked hurt. Of course we'll come. Elena, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell us you were even competing? When did all this happen? I've been competing for 4 years, I said. I won nationals in September. September? Dad stood up, agitated. That was 2 months ago. Elena, what the hell? Tom, Mom cut him off, but she looked equally upset. Elena, honey, I don't understand. Why would you hide this from us? I could have said so many things. I could have listed every recital they'd missed, every competition they'd dismissed, every time they'd chosen Sarah's participation trophy over my actual achievements. Instead, I said, I wasn't hiding it, I just didn't think you'd be interested. Not interested? Mom's eyes filled with tears. Sweetie, you're our daughter. Of course we're interested. Sarah, to her credit, looked genuinely confused. Elena, you're performing at Carnegie Hall? Like, the actual Carnegie Hall? That's insane. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were all too busy celebrating your 2 goals in a regional soccer game that didn't matter, I thought. But I said, well, I'm saying something now. Do you want to come or not? Of course we're coming, Dad said firmly. We'll all be there. Front row. I smiled thinly. The tickets are assigned seating. You'll be in the orchestra section, but not front row. I gave front row to Mrs. Chen and some of the competition judges. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. Mrs. Chen? Who's Mrs. Chen? My piano teacher. I thought you quit piano, Sarah said. No, I said simply. I just stopped playing at home. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Elena, Dad said finally, his voice strained, we clearly need to have a longer conversation about this. But right now I want you to know we're proud of you. This is amazing. They didn't ask to hear me play. They didn't ask about the competition or the piece I'd performed. They didn't ask how I'd afforded lessons or how I'd gotten to all these competitions. They just looked at me like I was a stranger, which I suppose I was. The next 2 weeks were chaotic. Suddenly, my family wanted to be involved in everything. Mom wanted to go shopping for my performance dress. I'd already bought one. Dad wanted to throw a party before Carnegie Hall. I declined. Sarah started telling everyone at school about her super talented sister. Where was that energy the last 4 years? The local news wanted to do a story. A camera crew came to our house, and that's when things got truly absurd. The reporter asked my parents about my musical journey. Mom and Dad, who hadn't heard me play piano in 4 years, who didn't know the name of my teacher, who'd missed every single competition, somehow had a lot to say. We've always known Elena was special, Mom told the camera, smiling. Ever since she was little, she's had this incredible gift. We've been supporting her passion for music her whole life, Dad added. It's been expensive and time-consuming, but when you have a talented child, you make sacrifices. I stood in the background, watching them lie on camera, and felt nothing. No anger, no betrayal, just cold, calculating satisfaction. Because they were making it so much worse for themselves, and they didn't even know it. The reporter asked Sarah about having a talented sister. It's amazing, Sarah gushed. Like, I play soccer, but Elena's doing something really special. I'm so proud of her. Then the reporter turned to me. Elena, your family seems incredibly supportive. How does it feel to have them all behind you? I smiled. It's nice to have them interested in my music now. The way I said now made the reporter pause, sensing a story. But we were running out of time and she moved on. The segment would air the day before Carnegie Hall. Mrs. Chen came to dinner one night at Mom's insistence. It was awkward from the start. Mrs. Chen, thank you so much for teaching Elena, Mom said, too bright, too loud. We had no idea she was still playing. You must think we're terrible parents. Mrs. Chen smiled politely. Elena is an exceptional student. She's very dedicated. How did this all start? Dad asked. How did Elena find you? She found me, Mrs. Chen said simply. She was 13. She paid for her own lessons and asked me not to contact you. I respected her wishes. The silence was deafening. She was 13? Mom's voice cracked. Tom, she was 13. How did we not notice? Dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Sarah, oblivious as always, said, That's actually kind of cool. Like a secret identity thing. Mrs. Chen looked at me, and I saw both pride and sadness in her eyes. Pride in what I'd accomplished. Sadness for what it had cost. After she left, Mom tried to talk to me. Elena, honey, I feel like we've missed so much. Can we talk about why you felt like you needed to hide this? There's nothing to hide, I said. I just knew you were busy with Sarah's activities. I didn't want to add more to your plate. It was a perfect answer because it put them in an impossible position. If they argued, they'd be admitting they'd prioritized Sarah. If they accepted it, they'd be admitting the same thing. Mom's face crumpled. Sweetie, we're never too busy for you. Okay, I said. Good to know. I went to my room, leaving her standing in the kitchen, and I didn't feel guilty at all. December 15th arrived. I woke up early, too excited and nervous to sleep. This wasn't Nationals, this was Carnegie Hall, one of the most prestigious venues in the world. People spent their whole lives dreaming of performing here, and I was about to do it at 17. In my first life, this never happened. I'd given up music, given up on myself. I'd spent decades wondering what might have been. Not this time. The day passed in a blur. Mom wanted to help me get ready, but I'd already planned everything with Mrs. Chen. We'd rented a hotel room near Carnegie Hall so I could prepare properly. You don't want to get ready at home? Mom looked hurt. I need to focus, I said. Mrs. Chen is helping me with vocal warm-ups and mental preparation. Vocal warm-ups? You're playing piano. It's a breathing technique, I explained patiently. For performance anxiety. This was partially true, but mainly I didn't want to spend my pre-performance time dealing with my family's suddenly overwhelming interest in my career. At 4 p.m., Ms. Chen and I left for the venue. My family would come separately, meet me after the performance. Carnegie Hall was magnificent. The backstage area buzzed with energy, stagehands, coordinators, other performers from the evening's program. I was the featured act, the headliner. A woman with a clipboard found me. Elena Martinez, I'm Sarah Castellano, the events director. We spoke over email. How are you feeling? Ready, I said, and I meant it. Excellent. The house is almost full. We had to open up additional seating in the upper balconies. You've got quite a draw. My heart raced. How many people? Looks like we'll have about 2,700 tonight. It's remarkable for a debut performance. 20,700 people. In my first life, maybe 10 people had come to my small recitals, most of them parents of other students. Sarah Castellano smiled at my expression. You've earned this, Elena. The video of your Nationals performance convinced a lot of skeptics that you're the real deal. Now go out there and prove them right. At 6:45, I walked to the stage wings and looked out at the filling auditorium. The seats were red velvet, the architecture gilded and ornate. The kind of beauty that made you believe in art, in excellence, in the possibility of transcendence. I scanned the orchestra section and found my family. They'd dressed up. Dad in a suit, Mom in a cocktail dress, Sarah in something sparkly. They looked excited, proud, like they'd been part of this journey from the beginning. A few rows ahead of them, I spotted Mrs. Chen. She wore a simple black dress and held a bouquet of flowers. Next to her were some of the judges from Nationals, including the renowned pianist who'd said I had something special. These were my people, the ones who'd actually been there. At 7 p.m. sharp, the lights dimmed. The audience settled into expectant silence. Sarah Castellano walked onto the stage to introduce me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for a very special performance. Our featured performer is Elena Martinez. who, at just 17 years old, recently won the National Youth Piano Competition with what judges called the finest performance in the competition's history. Tonight, she makes her Carnegie Hall debut performing Sergei Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 in D minor, widely considered one of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. Please welcome Elena Martinez. The applause was thunderous. I walked onto the stage and the lights hit me, warm and bright. The Steinway grand piano gleamed under the spots. I'd played on nice pianos before, but this was something else, an instrument worth hundreds of thousands of dollars maintained to perfection. I sat down, adjusted the bench, took a breath. Then I began to play. From the first notes, I knew this would be different from nationals. There was something about this room, this instrument, this moment. The piano responded to my touch like a living thing. The acoustics carried every note perfectly to every corner of the hall. I poured everything into that performance. All the pain from my first life, all the loneliness from this one. The years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. The cold satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. The pure, transcendent joy of doing what I was born to do. Rachmaninoff wrote this concerto during a period of deep depression, and you can hear it in the music, the darkness, the struggle, the eventual triumph. I knew that struggle intimately. My fingers flew across the keys in the technically demanding passages. I softened for the melancholic second movement, making grown men in the audience weep. And then the third movement, where I unleashed everything, every ounce of passion and power and skill I possessed. The final chord rang out, rich and resonant, then faded to silence. For a heartbeat, the audience was completely still. Then they exploded. The ovation was immediate and unanimous. People leapt to their feet. The applause was so loud it was almost frightening. I stood and bowed, overwhelmed. Mrs. Chen was crying. The judges were on their feet, clapping enthusiastically. And my family was standing too, clapping with the rest, but they looked shell-shocked, like they couldn't quite believe what they'd just witnessed. I bowed again, then walked off stage. Backstage was chaos. Sarah Castellano grabbed me in a hug. That was extraordinary. Elena, I've worked here for 15 years, and that's one of the finest debuts I've ever seen. Other staff members congratulated me. A photographer took photos. Someone handed me water. Then they sent me back out for a second bow. The audience was still applauding, still on their feet. I walked back to the piano and bowed deeply, letting myself finally believe it. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. When I came off stage again, the events director was waiting with my family. Mom had tears streaming down her face. Elena, I don't even have words. Dad looked pale. Sweetie, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were talented, but that was world class. Sarah hugged me tightly, Amma. You're amazing. Like, legitimately famous person, amazing. I accepted their praise coolly, professionally. Thank you. I'm glad you could make it. The way I said it, glad you could make it, like they were distant acquaintances who'd done me a small favor. Mom caught it. I saw her flinch. Mrs. Chen approached, and I immediately went to her, hugging her tightly. We did it, I whispered. You did it, she corrected. I just pointed you in the right direction. The judges came over next, effusive in their praise. They talked technique and interpretation, comparing me to legendary performers. My family stood awkwardly to the side, realizing they couldn't participate in this conversation. They didn't know enough about music to understand what was being discussed. Finally, we went to the reception. It was held in a beautiful room with champagne and canapes, full of music industry people, journalists, and wealthy patrons. A woman from Juilliard cornered me immediately. Elena, I'm Dr. Patricia Williams, Dean of Admissions. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your performance and confirm that your full scholarship is waiting for you whenever you're ready. Thank you, I said. I'll be starting next fall. Wonderful. We're very excited to have you. A man in an expensive suit introduced himself as a talent agent. I'd love to discuss representation. With your permission, I think we could book you for performances across the country, maybe internationally. I took his card. I'll have my people contact you. My people. I liked how that sounded. Throughout the reception, people kept approaching me, journalists wanting interviews, musicians wanting to collaborate, wealthy patrons wanting to fund my career. I smiled and networked and collected business cards, every inch the professional. My family hovered at the edges, trying to look like they belonged. A journalist from the New York Times approached. Elena, that was a stunning performance. I'm writing a profile piece. Can I ask you a few questions? Of course. You're quite young to be performing at this level. How long have you been training? Seriously training? About 4 years. 4 years? She looked shocked. That's remarkable. And your family must have been incredibly supportive, especially financially. Private lessons, competition fees, travel. It all adds up. I smiled. Actually, I paid for my own lessons with money from summer jobs and saved birthday gifts. My family didn't know I was competing until a few weeks ago. The journalist's eyes widened. They didn't know? No, they thought I'd quit piano. Why did they think that? Because I told them I had. They were busy with other things. The journalist glanced at my family, then back at me. I could see her journalist instincts kicking in. There was a story here. What were they busy with? My sister's soccer. She plays on her school team. The contrast was so stark it was almost funny. Carnegie Hall debut versus high school soccer. And they missed your national competition? They did. It conflicted with one of her games. The journalist was writing quickly now. What was that like for you? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Disappointing, initially, but ultimately liberating. It taught me not to perform for other people's approval. I play because I love it, because I'm good at it. The validation I need comes from here. I gestured at the room, the venue, not from people who don't understand what I do. Even when those people are your family? Especially then. Mom was close enough to hear this exchange. I watched. Her face crumble. The journalist thanked me and moved away. Others approached. More journalists, more musicians, more opportunities. At one point, Sarah Castellano pulled me aside. Elena, I've been doing this a long time. That performance wasn't just technically excellent. It was emotionally devastating. You played like someone with something to prove. I did have something to prove. To whom? I looked at my family across the room, huddled together, looking lost. To myself mostly, but also to everyone who told me I wasn't good enough, wasn't important enough, wasn't worth their time. Sarah Castellano followed my gaze. Your family? Among others. She squeezed my shoulder. Well, you proved it. Anyone who heard you play tonight knows you're exceptional. The reception lasted 2 hours. By the end, I had interview requests from major publications, performance offers from venues across the country, and interest from 3 different record labels. I also had a family that looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole and die. We rode back to the hotel in silence. I'd agreed to let them take me back to the hotel where I was staying with Mrs. Chen before returning home tomorrow. Finally, in the hotel lobby, Dad spoke. Elena, we need to talk about all of this. What's there to talk about? Everything. Mom's voice broke. Sweetie, we had no idea you were this talented, that you were doing all of this. If you'd known what? I interrupted. You would have come to my competitions? You would have asked me about my music? You would have noticed when I left the house for lessons every week? Elena, that's not fair, Dad said. You deliberately hid this from us. I told you I was playing piano. You just didn't care enough to ask about it. That's not true, Mom protested weakly. Baby, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me about my day? About my interests? About anything that didn't relate to Sarah or her activities? Sarah, to her credit, looked stricken. Elena, I didn't know. I know you didn't know, I said softer. Sarah, this isn't about you. You're fine. You're just a kid doing what kids do, but Mom, Dad, you're the adults. You made choices about where to put your attention, your energy, your money, and those choices had consequences. We're sorry, Mom whispered. Elena, we're so sorry. We clearly made mistakes, But we can fix this. We can fix what? I don't need you to fix anything. I'm going to Juilliard on a full scholarship. I have a Carnegie Hall debut on my resume. I have agents and record labels interested in me. I did all of that without you. The words hung in the air, brutal in their honesty. So what now? Dad asked quietly. You just cut us out? We don't get to be part of your success? I considered this. I'm not cutting you out. You're welcome to come to future performances if you want. You're welcome to follow my career from a distance, but I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your support. I stopped needing those things when I realized I was never going to get them. Elena, Mom was crying now, please, we love you. We made mistakes, but we love you. I know you love me, I said. And I did know it, in an abstract way. They weren't evil, they were just neglectful, thoughtless. So focused on Sarah that they'd forgotten they had another daughter. Then give us a chance to make this right. How? She floundered, unable to answer. That's what I thought, I said. Look, it's late, I'm tired, let's all go home and process this. I hugged Ms. Chen goodbye. She was staying in the city for a few more days, and got in the car with my family. The drive home was silent. Over the next few days, the profile piece came out in the New York Times. The journalist hadn't pulled any punches. The article was titled, "The Prodigy They Forgot, Elena Martinez's Solo Journey to Carnegie Hall." It detailed everything: my secret lessons, my hidden competitions, my family's complete ignorance of my accomplishments. It quoted my comments about playing for my own validation, not for people who didn't understand my work. It contrasted my Carnegie Hall debut with Sarah's high school soccer. The article went viral. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Social media exploded with commentary about neglectful parents, golden child syndrome, and the pressure on gifted children. Parent bloggers wrote think pieces. Educational psychologists weighed in. The story resonated because it touched something universal: the pain of being overlooked, the triumph of succeeding anyway. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friend requests, messages, interview requests. My social media followers jumped from a few hundred to over 100,000 in 3 days. The video of my Carnegie Hall performance was posted online and got 5 million views in the first week. At school, I was suddenly a celebrity. Kids who'd never spoken to me wanted selfies. Teachers treated me differently, with a kind of reverent respect. At home, things were worse. Mom couldn't stop crying. She'd read the New York Times article over and over, each time seeming to discover new ways she'd failed me. Dad oscillated between defensiveness and guilt. One moment, he'd argue that I should have been more direct about my needs. The next, he'd sit in silence, staring at nothing. Sarah stopped going to soccer practice. When Mom asked why, she said, "What's the point? I'm not even good. You just told me I was." That comment seemed to break something in Mom. The family dynamics I'd known for 2 lifetimes were collapsing, and I watched it happen with detached interest. One evening, about a week after Carnegie Hall, Dad asked me to sit down with him. "Elena, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about our choices and their consequences." He looked older than I'd ever seen him. "You're right, we failed you. We got so caught up in supporting Sarah and making her feel special that we forgot you needed support too." "Okay," I said neutrally. "I don't know how to fix this," he continued. "I don't know if we can fix this, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, and I'm ashamed." It was a good apology, probably the best I was going to get. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "Is there anything we can do? Anything at all?" I thought about it. You could start by being honest with Sarah. Tell her the truth about her soccer skills. Stop setting her up for disappointment. Dad flinched. "That seems cruel." "What's cruel is lying to her. She's 17. She's going to apply to colleges soon. If she thinks she's good enough for a soccer scholarship and she's not, she's going to be devastated. Better she knows now and finds something she's actually passionate about." He nodded slowly. "You're right. When did you get so wise?" If only he knew. The conversation with Sarah happened that weekend. I wasn't there for it, but I heard about it afterward. Mom and Dad sat her down and gently, carefully explained that while they were proud of her for playing soccer, she probably wasn't at a scholarship level. That they'd been overly enthusiastic because they wanted to support her, but they might have given her unrealistic expectations. Sarah apparently took it better than expected. I kind of knew, she told me later, sitting on my bed. I mean, I'm not stupid. I see the other girls on the team. I see the girls on the travel teams. I'm okay, but I'm not great. Then why keep playing? Because Mom and Dad were so excited about it. It made them happy. She picked at my comforter. I guess I was doing the same thing you stopped doing, performing for their approval instead of for myself. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone I'd missed in my first life. A girl who was also trying to figure out who she was, separate from our parents' expectations. So, what do you actually like? I asked. I don't know. I've spent so much time on soccer, I never really explored anything else. She paused. Your music is amazing, by the way. I watched the Carnegie Hall video like 10 times. I cried during the second movement. Really? Yeah, it's so beautiful, Elena. And you look so free when you play, like nothing else matters. That's exactly what it feels like. I want that, Sarah said quietly. I want to find something that makes me feel that way. You will, I told her, and I meant it. Over the next month, things slowly began to stabilize into a new normal. Mom started therapy. She was dealing with a lot of guilt, but she was also genuinely trying to understand where things had gone wrong. Dad made an effort to ask me about my music, though our conversations were sometimes awkward. He didn't have the vocabulary to discuss what I did, but he was trying. Sarah quit soccer and joined the school's art club. Turned out she was actually pretty good at painting. Not prodigy level, but genuinely talented. And more importantly, she loved it. As for me, my career was exploding. The performance offers kept coming. Smaller venues at first, regional symphony halls, university auditoriums. I was selective, only accepting engagements that fit my schedule and artistic goals. A record label offered me a contract. With Mrs. Chen and a lawyer's help, I negotiated terms that were extremely favorable for someone my age. My debut album would be recorded in the spring and released in the fall, timed with my entrance to Juilliard. The National Youth Competition asked me to return as a special guest performer at the next year's finals. I was invited to perform at the White House for a state dinner. Every dream I'd had in my first life, every achievement I'd missed by giving up, I was experiencing it all now. And I was 17. But the most satisfying moment came from an unexpected source. In January, 2 months after Carnegie Hall, my school held its winter assembly. The principal had been asking me to perform for weeks, and I'd finally agreed. I sat at the piano in the school auditorium, looking out at a sea of students and teachers. My family was there too, sitting in the middle section. Mom had taken the afternoon off work. Dad had rearranged meetings. Sarah sat between them. The principal introduced me with genuine pride, listing my accomplishments. Nationals winner, Carnegie Hall debut, upcoming Juilliard scholarship record deal. Elena Martinez isn't just an exceptional musician, she said. She's an example of what dedication, passion, and perseverance can achieve. She's proof that if you work hard enough at something you love, success will follow. I played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Not as technically demanding as Rachmaninoff, but emotionally complex. Beautiful and melancholic and hopeful all at once. The auditorium was silent except for the music. When I finished, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Students whistled and cheered, teachers stood up, and my family was crying, all 3 of them. After the assembly, students mobbed me with questions and congratulations. I answered patiently, signed some autographs, took some selfies. Then my family approached. That was beautiful, sweetie, Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Elena, Dad said, I know we haven't been the parents you deserved, but watching you up there, seeing what you've become, I'm so proud of you. Not just of your talent, but of your strength. You did this without us, and that's both heartbreaking and incredible. We love you, Sarah added. And we're going to do better. I'm going to do better. I want to be the kind of sister who deserves you. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. They couldn't undo years of neglect with a few months of effort, but maybe the beginning of something new. I love you too, said. All of you. This was never about not loving you. It was about loving myself enough to succeed even when you weren't paying attention. Mom hugged me tightly, but we're paying attention now. I promise we're paying attention. That spring, things continued to evolve. I performed at 6 different venues across the country, each performance building my reputation. The New York Times music critic wrote a follow-up piece calling me the most exciting young classical musician in America. My debut album, recorded over spring break, featured Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, along with several shorter pieces by Chopin and Liszt. The label was already predicting strong sales. I graduated high school as valedictorian. My speech was about pursuing excellence even when the world isn't watching, about internal versus external validation, about the importance of believing in yourself when no one else does. It was received with a standing ovation. Sarah graduated too, middle of her class, but she didn't seem bothered by it. She'd been accepted to a state university with a good arts program. She was going to study graphic design. It's not Juilliard, she joked, but it's mine. That's what matters, I told her. In August, Mom and Dad helped me move into my Juilliard dorm. It was a small single room, but it was in New York City at one of the world's most prestigious music schools, surrounded by other exceptional musicians. You sure you have everything? Mom asked for the third time, fussing with my bedding. I'm sure, Mom. And you'll call if you need anything? I will. Dad stood by the window, looking out at the city. This is what you wanted, he said quietly. What you worked for. Yes. He turned to face me. Elena, I need you to know something. What you did, teaching yourself, funding your own education, competing without support, that took incredible strength. Strength you shouldn't have needed because we should have been there for you. But I'm glad you have it. That strength is going to take you so far. Thank you, Dad. They left eventually, and I was alone in my dorm room in New York City, about to start my dream education. I sat on the bed and pulled out my phone. On impulse, I opened my old social media account from my first life, the one that had died with me. Obviously, it didn't exist in this timeline, but I remembered it. I remembered the bitter, disappointed woman I'd been at 32, working a job I hated, estranged from my family, full of regrets. That woman was gone. I'd made sure of it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Proud of you, Elena. Enjoy every moment. You've earned this. I smiled and texted back. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. Her response came quickly, son. Yes, you could have. The talent was always yours. I just helped you see it. That night, I went to the practice rooms, available to Juilliard students 24/7, and found an empty one with a beautiful grand piano. I sat down and played for myself, not for an audience, not for a grade, not to prove anything, just for the pure joy of it. I played until my fingers ached and my soul felt light. 3 months later, my album released. It debuted at #1 on the classical music charts and crossed over to the mainstream top 40, almost unheard of for a classical album. The reviews were unanimously positive. Critics called it stunning, masterful, the work of an old soul in a young body. If only they knew how right they were. The album sales meant money, real money, more than I'd ever had in my first life. I invested some, saved some, and used some to establish a scholarship fund for young musicians who couldn't afford lessons. I called it the Second Chance Fund. Mom cried when I told her about it. That's beautiful, Elena. You're turning your pain into something that helps others. That's the only way pain is useful, I said. My family came to my first major concert at Lincoln Center that winter. They sat in the orchestra section, seats I'd purchased for them, and this time they were present not just physically but emotionally. After the performance, Mom hugged me backstage. You were magnificent. I'm so sorry I missed seeing you become this person. You're seeing it now, I said, but That's what matters. Is it enough? She asked. Yeah. Can you forgive us? I thought about it honestly. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. What happened happened. You can't change it, and I wouldn't want to. It made me who I am. But we can move forward. We can build something new. I'd like that, she whispered. Me too. Over the next 2 years, life fell into a rhythm of performance, study, and growth. I completed my degree at Juilliard with honors. I performed at major venues across the US and Europe. My second album was even more successful than the first, but the most meaningful moments were often the quietest ones. Sarah visiting me in New York and us spending the weekend exploring museums, talking about art and life and the futures we were building. Dad coming to a performance and actually understanding enough about music now to discuss technique with me afterward. He'd been taking piano lessons himself, trying to comprehend my world. Mom sending me articles about classical music, asking thoughtful questions, making a genuine effort to understand what I did. They weren't perfect. Sometimes they still defaulted to old patterns, still occasionally prioritized the wrong things. But they were trying, and I could see the effort. On my 21st birthday, my family threw me a surprise party. Small, intimate, just them, Mrs. Chen, a few friends from Juilliard. Speech, Sarah called out, grinning. I'm not making a speech at my own birthday party, I protested. Come on, Dad encouraged, just a few words. I sighed but stood up. Okay, fine, I'm grateful for this, for all of you being here, for the journey we've been on, both the hard parts and the good parts. The hard parts made me strong, the good parts made it worthwhile. And, Mom prompted. And I'm happy, that's all. I'm just happy. It was such a simple statement, but it was true. In my first life, I died bitter and unfulfilled. In this life, at 21, I was successful, surrounded by people who cared about me, doing work I loved. That night, after everyone left, I sat at my piano and played. I played the Rachmaninoff concerto that had changed everything. But this time, it felt different. Less like a battle cry and more like a celebration. Less about proving something and more about expressing something. I'd spent so much of this life, both lives really, fighting. Fighting for recognition, for validation, for success. But I'd won. Not just the competitions and the accolades, though those were real. I'd won the bigger battle. The battle to become myself, to live authentically, to build a life I was proud of. The epilogue of my story wasn't one dramatic moment. It was a series of small victories that added up to a life well lived. I continued to perform at major venues around the world. My third album, recorded when I was 23, won a Grammy. I became one of the youngest musicians ever to achieve that honor. The scholarship fund I'd established grew, helping dozens of talented young musicians access lessons and opportunities they couldn't otherwise afford. My relationship with my family remained complicated, but genuine. We'd never get back the years they'd missed, but we built new memories. They came to my performances, I came home for holidays. We talked regularly, honestly, about both the past and the future. Sarah became a successful graphic designer and got married at 25. I played at her wedding, Pachelbel's Canon in D, her favorite piece. Thank you for not giving up on us, she whispered when we hugged that day, for letting us be part of your life, even after everything. You're my sister, I said simply. That never changed. Mom and Dad aged gracefully, their guilt slowly transforming into pride. They became my biggest champions, attending every performance they could, displaying my awards in their home, telling anyone who would listen about their daughter, the pianist. Sometimes I caught them looking at me with this mixture of awe and regret. Awe at what I'd achieved, regret for what they'd almost missed. Do you ever wish things had been different? Mom asked me once when I was 27, visiting for Christmas. Different how? That we'd been better parents. That you hadn't had to do it all alone. I considered this. Honestly, no. If things had been different, I might have been different. Softer, maybe. Less driven. I might not have developed the strength I needed to succeed at this level. That's generous of you, she said quietly. It's not generosity, it's just truth. We can't undo the past, and I wouldn't want to, but we can appreciate what we have now. She hugged me tightly. I do appreciate it every day. By the time I was 30, I'd accomplished more than most musicians do in a lifetime. World tours, prestigious awards, collaborations with legendary performers. My recordings were studied in conservatories. Young pianists cited me as an inspiration. But the achievement I was most proud of was simpler. I'd lived a life true to myself. I hadn't waited for permission or approval. I hadn't let other people's limitations become my own. I'd seen what I wanted, and I'd gone after it with everything I had. The girl who'd stood in that empty auditorium at 17, clutching a trophy no one cared about, had become a woman performing on the world's greatest stages. The family that had missed her greatest moment had learned to show up. And I had learned that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's success. It's becoming so undeniably excellent that the people who overlooked you are forced to see you, really see you, and recognize what they almost lost. On the 10th anniversary of my Carnegie Hall debut, they held a special commemorative performance. I returned to that same stage, older now but still just 27, to perform the same piece that had launched my career. My family was there, front row this time. Mrs. Chen was there, elderly now but still sharp, still proud. The auditorium was packed with fans, industry professionals, and students who'd grown up with my recordings. Before I played, the events director, still Sarah Castellano after all these years, gave a speech. 10 years ago, a 17-year-old girl walked onto this stage and changed the classical music world. Elena Martinez has since become one of the defining musicians of her generation. But what makes her story special isn't just her talent. It's her determination, her independence, her refusal to let circumstances define her limitations. She represents what's possible when passion meets perseverance. The applause was warm and enthusiastic. I walked to the piano, sat down, and looked out at the audience. So much had changed in 10 years, but the feeling was the same, that electric anticipation, that connection between performer and listener, that sense of being exactly where I was meant to be. I began to play. The Rachmaninoff flowed from my fingers, as familiar as breathing, but still challenging, still requiring every ounce of skill and emotion I possessed. The darkness, the struggle, the triumph, all of it was there in the music. But this time, I played it differently. Not as a weapon or a statement, but as a gift. For everyone who'd supported me. For everyone I'd inspired. For the girl I'd been and the woman I'd become. When I finished, the ovation lasted a full 5 minutes. Afterward, at the reception, a young girl approached me shyly. She looked about 13, clutching a program for me to sign. Ms. Martinez, I just wanted to say, and thank you. I read your story about how you taught yourself and competed without your parents knowing. My family doesn't really understand my music either, and sometimes I feel really alone. But you showed me that's okay, that I can do it anyway. I knelt down to her level. What's your name? Sophie. Sophie, listen to me. You're not alone. There are so many of us. People who love what we do even when others don't understand it. And that's okay. You don't need everyone to understand. You just need to believe in yourself and work as hard as you can. The rest will follow. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? And Sophie? 10 years from now, you might be the one on that stage. So don't give up, okay? I won't, she promised. Watching her walk away, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. My story hadn't just been about me. It had become something bigger, a reminder that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, that being overlooked doesn't mean being without value, that you don't need everyone's approval to succeed. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat at my personal piano, a beautiful Steinway I'd bought with my first album earnings. I thought about both my lives. The first one full of regret and missed opportunities. This one full of achievement and hard-won victories. If I could go back and change things, make my family attentive from the start, give myself an easier path, would I? No. Because easy paths don't build character. Easy paths don't create the kind of hunger and determination that separates good from great. Easy paths don't teach you to rely on yourself, to trust your own judgment, to persist when everyone else has given up. My family had missed my award ceremony for a soccer game. They'd chosen wrong, and it had hurt. But that hurt had forged me into something stronger, something better than I might have otherwise been. I'd turned their neglect into my advantage. I'd transformed their absence into my presence. I'd made sure that when they finally paid attention, there was something magnificent to see. And now, at 27, with a career most musicians only dream of, with a family that had learned to appreciate me, with a life full of purpose and passion and achievement, now I could say with absolute certainty, I'd won. Not just the competitions, not just the accolades, not just the success. I'd won the bigger game, the one that matters. I'd won my life back and I'd made it count. I placed my fingers on the keys and began to play, not for an audience, not for approval, not to prove anything, just for me, just for the pure, perfect joy of it. The music filled my apartment, spilling out into the New York night, a private concert for myself, and I smiled. Because after everything, 2 lifetimes of struggle and triumph, I'd finally arrived at the place I'd always been meant to reach, complete and absolute peace with who I was and what I'd become. They'd missed my award ceremony for her soccer game. I'd never told them I won nationals. And in that silence, in that absence of their attention, I'd built something they could never take away from me. A life of my own choosing. A success entirely mine. And that was the sweetest victory of all.